If food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China and the USA. That's quite shocking. Here in Wales, we're a very small country of about 3 million inhabitants, but we still send to landfill 400,000 tonnes of food waste every year. 20% of that waste is waste that couldn't have been eaten, unavoidable waste. But 80% is food that could have been eaten. Just 1% of all that waste could make 9 million meals. That's 3 meals for every person in Wales. And it's all the more shocking, really, when you think that at any one time in this country, approximately 25%, 1/4 of the population are living in relative poverty, and they struggle to afford good, nutritious food. I'd like to take you back to the COVID-19 pandemic. During that somewhat terrible time, my colleagues and I were working on a local authority project in the Bridgend Valleys. And the pandemic presented a whole array of challenges to us, but it also highlighted that there were some significant issues with regard to food and food security. A lot of people in the valley communities don't actually own a car. Many were dependent on sharing cars for lifts to get to the shops, but actually they couldn't because of the lockdown restrictions. The bus services were reduced. Social distancing was in place. Supermarket delivery services were overwhelmed with demand, and anyway, if you were on a low income, there was a minimum spend, which it was quite often difficult to achieve. So, food insecurity was indeed on the rise, and people were being forced to buy food from small local shops, shops which inevitably are much more expensive than the larger supermarkets. We decided to look for a solution, and we approached a Welsh charitable company that supplies manufacturer and retailer food surplus to community groups and organisations. And we also established, having established that we could actually get food from them, that community venues could open if they were providing a food service. So we put the two things together, and we opened 5 community pantries initially within the valley communities. The pantries, we felt, should not be stigmatising in any way. So we decided that rather than giving free food, handouts, that we would ask people for a small amount of money, a contribution of £5, to pay for a large bag of mixed foods. This was quite successful, and people seemed to like that system. We also felt that no questions should be asked, that there should be no means testing, because after all, if the fridge breaks down this week and you need 2 new tyres for the car next, we all have been in those situations where it's tough to make ends meet this month. So the community pantries were open to all. They always have been, and I hope they always will be. Demand grew after those first 5. Many other organisations, community groups approached us and asked if we could help them to open a community pantry, which we did. But as the pandemic began to move towards its end, we realised that other problems were coming to the fore. Things like the rise in the cost of living, things like people had been socially isolated for a long, long time and they were missing contact with others. And of course, mental health was at an all-time low. We felt we needed a model, a role model really, with which to move on. Several years earlier, my family and I had been fortunate enough to visit sub-Saharan Africa. And whilst there, we had been struck on a number of occasions by the Baobab tree, the tree of life. What an unusual tree that it is. The Baobab tree produces a highly nutrient-dense fruit, and it also, phenomenally, stores water in its trunk, up to 140,000 litres in one tree. Mature baobab trees tend to stop growing vertically when they're a mere 200 years or so old. And as a result, they grow widthways instead, and they open out, and in the middle of the tree you get a sort of hollow or a shelter. The root network is also quite phenomenal. The roots on a baobab tree descend at least 2 meters into the earth, and the root network far outweighs the size of the canopy of the tree. Quite a tree. In the African communities, the baobab tree is often a focus of village life. It's a place where local people meet. They go to socialise, they sing songs, tell stories, that kind of thing. Insects, animals, they all gravitate towards the baobab tree. Humans, actually, quite often hollow out parts of the tree to collect rainwater to drink as well. But the baobab tree is really an amazing example of sustainability, and also it is quite a good community hub too. We felt it was a role model for us for moving forward. So the first thing was that the community pantries, taking advantage of the manufacturer and retailer surplus food, had to be based in local communities, places that people could access and come to, not just for food, but for social contact, social interaction and support. Like the tree, the nutritious fruit, we wanted to provide a range of foods as nutritious as we possibly could make them. But importantly, after the long months, years of the pandemic, people really were missing social contact. And so one of the most important factors in the community pantries was the ability for people to get together, to have a chat over a cup of tea, to maybe also speak with one of our partners, many of whom still come into the pantries very regularly and give targeted support to our clients. The setup of the pantries is really something that came over to us recently, or really hit us with a particular client who had been coming to a pantry for some time. She's a young mum with 5 children, 4 of whom have additional learning needs. Dad is no longer on the scene and had not been contributing financially to the family for some time. After some considerable months of her attending the pantry, we found out that things were a little bit difficult financially, and so we put her in touch with one of our partner organisations. They were able to work with her. We didn't hear anything else, but a few weeks later she came into the pantry and proudly showed us that all of her children now had new shoes, because as a result of the signpost from us to our partner, she was now getting regular payments from Dad. But furthermore, the children love coming in each week because they go to the colouring and the craft table and they play with some of the volunteers. But Mum also has the opportunity to come and sit down with other adults, have some adult conversation and enjoy a cuppa, which is something that she never normally gets at home. In the community pantries, the big essential ingredient, like with the tree, the water that's drawn in through its roots, that comes up into the trunk and is stored there, could be described as its lifeblood. But the lifeblood of the community pantries is undoubtedly our volunteer workforce. They are incredible. They turn up week after week, year after year. They treat people with kindness and respect. They help them with their shopping. They signpost them to other organisations. They sit and chat, make cups of tea, and generally help to build well-being in communities. They are definitely our lifeblood. One of the strengths now of having a number of community pantries in operation is that they form a supportive network. The Baobab tree, you will remember, has a massive network of roots underneath it, underpinning it, pulling in the water, making it strong. That network of roots is epitomised by the network of our community pantries as well. In the way that the roots strengthen the tree, such that a lot of them live for 800 or 1,000 years, even 2,000 years, the fact that the pantries can now support each other is a great source of sustainability and strength, whether that is that they are sharing food. If a large donation comes into one pantry, it can be shared with others, whether it's sharing good practice or sometimes learning from bad practice, whether it's volunteers covering for others who are on holiday or on sick leave. One way and another, the network is becoming a great strength. We have added to that some community growing projects, and these are actually very valuable in a number of ways. With regard to mental health, working in an outdoor environment, growing produce that is going to help feed others is a very powerful way to improve your own mental health. But in actual fact, as we've heard in a few talks today, plants are very good at removing atmospheric carbon. So the more we can grow things, the better it is for the planet. In addition to that, of course, all of the produce travels a very short distance from the growing projects into the pantries, as they are all part of the local network. And that too has a lot of value in reducing their carbon footprint. So far, we have been open for four years this week, actually. The community pantries have saved 300 tonnes plus of food from going to landfill, and 41,000 bags of food, well, just over actually, have been distributed into the South Wales Valley communities. But it's not the whole picture. And sadly, 70% of UK food waste is from households. That's you and me. The manufacturer and retailer surplus that we use is simply 18% of the whole. If we contrast our existence with that of somebody in Zambia, this woman is in a little outdoor kitchen in a Zambian village. She will have grown her own maize. She will have harvested it and dried it in the sun, and then she will have ground that into corn flour. She has mixed the corn flour with water, and she's cooking it over an open fire to make nsima dough, which is a staple of the sub-Saharan African diet. She will eat that with maybe some homegrown vegetables made into a relish. But the thing about that is that there will be no waste, zero waste. But when you contrast that with our first world existence, we don't give food waste a second thought, really. But food waste is all of our responsibility, and it's something that all of us can do something about. I'd like you to think just a little about the food that you waste, about things like perhaps going shopping when there's actually still quite a bit in the fridge that you could use, but hey, you've just brought a whole load of new food, so let's just throw it away. Things like serving massive portions of food that nobody can eat everything, and so there's lots of waste. And things like takeaways and ready meals, which very often aren't the right portion size and often get wasted. There are so many ways in which we could all cut down on our food waste. Cooking from scratch, batch cooking, not using over-processed foods. Highly processed foods have a much larger carbon footprint than cooking raw foods from scratch. It's all really down to education. Education is all. And so our organisation, in common with a lot of others in the same sector, strives to educate people how to cook food, the most efficient methods, the most economical methods, and to encourage people to eat a good, healthy diet. If we all take small steps, small measures, then an awful lot can be achieved. So I wonder, is there a community pantry or a community garden in your local area? If not, why not start one? Thank you.